But I think the real introduction to Msgr Franco is from Fulton J Sheen. To my dear friend, Father Hilary Franco, who has done more for me than any priest in the world and is a constant edification. Gratefully in Christ, Fulton J Sheen. What can you say about someone who has that testimony publicly? Msgr Franco.
Well, it took me a long time to find this beautiful picture that he gave me. You will find it on the cover. You know, this is, I did not want to publish it simply because, as you do know, I believe that Bishop Sheen is a saintly man and is a saintly bishop. And I do not wish to say that saints tell lies. So, I mean, for a saint to say something, a horrible, beautiful thing, you know, about me, that was a lie. All right? Just, but I do have to say that the most important years of my life were spent with this exceptional man. That's why finally, after a long ministry in the church, I want you to pray for me. Because on the night of next month, should I tell them? You know, yeah, I guess. I will celebrate 60 years of priesthood. Can you imagine that? At that time, I was the youngest priest ever ordained. It was a great privilege. I don't know why. At that time, we had a great leader in the American Church called Francis Cardinal Spellman. So you couldn't say no to Cardinal Spellman. So I said, Your Eminence, I can wait. You know, no, it's all right. And that was it. You know, in those days, we priests obeyed. I'm not saying that we don't obey now, you know, but that was part of what I believe my priesthood meant. Trying to put into action what I had seen in Bishop Fulton J Sheen. He was interested, he had only two great interests in his life: God and the people of God. That's all. He concentrated on those two things. But let me begin by saying that I feel that I should be very brief, because he used to say, when you preach, you always think in terms of the first 5 minutes. Remember, the people have to look at you, and they will see they will say the priest, you know, has a red nose or anything of the kind. They have to move and situate themselves. And so those 5 minutes, he would always start with some kind of a joke. Take, for instance, one day, every year we used to be, by the way, I can talk about Fulton J Sheen until, without stopping for 3 days. So if you're ready for it, we can get some sandwiches, whatever. But as the things come to mind, I will tell you. One day, we had a great relationship with most of the people in Hollywood. We're dealing with a man who had a small audience for 15 years, 16 actually, 16 years, small audience, prime time, 40 million people. You know what I mean? It's really an incredible thing. 10,000 letters a week. I had 61 secretaries to respond to those letters. Most of the letters would say, well, we loved your show the last week, or something to that effect. And then he wrote 72 bestsellers. We're talking about an exceptional man. Frank Sinatra and Milton Berle had to change their time programs simply because on ABC Fulton J Sheen was on. Just to give you a glimpse of this tremendous man. So, one of our great friends was somebody by the name of, I don't know if you remember him, Jackie Gleason. Did you ever hear of Jackie Gleason? Yes, remember, you know, the cup and whatever. So every year we had to go to Miami because he would have this show from Miami Beach actually, and we would go because he wanted the bishop on his birthday, which was in February, to start the program. So we did it also because it was a question of taxes, naturally, but he used to give $75,000 every year to the Bishop Sheen Fund for the Poor of the World. See? And he was so interested, the bishop, about the poor of the world, that would always give, see how things come to mind and memories. The first time that I was opening some of his correspondence, being the assistant, and one day, the first time that I saw a check for $1 million, and I said to the bishop, where should I put this? And he looked at me, and like, it was kind of natural. He said, well, the same place. The same places. Yes. That was the fund for the poor of the world. $1 million. I don't know how many bishops would do that today. What do you think? I don't think so. But anyhow, that happened almost altogether. Most probably he, of his own appearances, gave millions of dollars in those days, just to give you a glimpse of whatever was the activity of the bishop. Then, going back to Jackie Gleason, we were, naturally, I was with the bishop. I was backstage, and here's the bishop starting his program, the program of Jackie Gleason. He says, I was backstage, and Jackie looked at me and he said, Bishop, you should, that's it, Bishop, you should not look at the chorus girls, because there were some chorus girls preparing themselves to come out on stage. And I looked at Jackie Gleason and I said to him, not because I am on a diet, it means that I cannot look at the menu. This is Bishop Sheen, the holy man. He would always start with something to attract the attention. Then he would say, the second and the third 5 minutes, they are the most important minutes. After that, forget it. And he was so right. So I'm not going to annoy you tonight with so many stories that I could go on, as I said, for days. But I would like you to ask some questions about this exceptional man. But before I go any further, I would like to say that I had the privilege of being with him for 5 years. We lived at 109 East 38th Street in Manhattan. Now, because of my new work, I live at 123 East 38th Street. So it was kind of a full circle for me coming back to that neighborhood. But this man was such an exceptional man that just to give you a glimpse of some of the statistics relating to him, I know them by heart, you know, but I want you to understand how difficult it was in those days for the Catholics in the United States of America. Fulton J Sheen actually put Catholicism on the map in the United States of America. This is why most probably, eventually, we will have a Catholic president. We had our audience that was 40% Catholic, 30% Jewish, and 30% Protestant. most of the Jewish jokes that I know, because, you know, Georgie Jessel used to come, and all the other, well, actually, Jack Benny. I have something about Jack Benny that he always said that he was 39 years old. It was actually one day that he had come to the house to have dinner with us. At the end of the dinner, as a young man, I looked at him and they said, I don't know, tonight there is something wrong with you. What is bothering you? And he looked at me and he said, Father, I have to go on TV tonight and I have to tell them it's my birthday and I don't want to tell them my age. So it came natural to me. I said, you know, don't tell them you're 40, tell them you're 39. He never gave me credit for that. That bothers me. I wanted just to tell you, in a poll taken by an internet with 23,455 people casting ballots, the top 4 Catholics of the 20th century were naturally St. John Paul II, another friend of mine, Mother Teresa, Saint Padre Pio, and the 4th was Archbishop Fulton J Sheen. Just to give you a glimpse. And the Catholic Almanac for the year 2000, published by our Sunday Visitor, described Sheen as the most popular and socially influential American Catholic of the 20th century. Certainly, Fulton J. Sheen was the best, most popular public speaker in the church. Millions, United States, wherever I go, and they know that I was the angel erasing the blackboard, they always remember Fulton J. Sheen, still today. In 1979, Billy Graham called Sheen one of the greatest preachers of this century. He said that, in the 20th century. Just a glimpse of what he did. The Life is Worth Living started in 1952, became extremely popular, competing effectively against show-starring Mr. Television of the time, Milton Berle, and Frank Sinatra, as I was saying. In his first years on television, Sheen won the Emmy Award. Very few people do not know this. And also a cover of Time magazine. It's interesting that he was nominated and got the award for the most outstanding television personality, beating media giants of the time, like Lucille Ball. Probably you know I Love Lucy. You have seen some of those programs. Arthur Godfrey and Jimmy Durante. He was on the cover of Time magazine, TV Guide, and Look magazine in those days. I do have to tell you that between 1952 and 56, according to the poll taken by Gallup, Sheen was one of the nation's 10 most admired men. And over a period of 54 years, he authored 72 books, pamphlets, printed radio talks. His syndicated column in the secular press ran for 30 years. Then I remember in January 1979, he was asked to give a talk at the prayer breakfast in Washington. As you do know, at that time it used to be called the presidential prayer breakfast. In 1979, he was asked to preach, to say the talk. There were 3,000 people, actually Congress and all the big wheels of Washington. And then he started by saying, Mr. President, you are a sinner. Mrs. Carter, you are a sinner. I am a sinner. And he went on to give one of the most beautiful talks. That was the 25th of January, 1979. Then on the 4th of October of that same year, Bishop Sheen actually got the embrace of a Pope, John Paul II, who in this kind of prophetic way, he had already in mind what John Paul II would do. As you will see from this book, you have it's based on what Pat did a terrific job by interviewing me in the second part of this book. And then you have over 100 handwritten letters that he wrote to me every single month while he was, until almost his death. Guess what? On the 4th of October, the Pope, John Paul II, came to the United States for the first time. Not he as John Paul II, because we already had a Pope, Pope Paul VI, that had come on the 4th of October, 1965, during the council. Now, he's coming back, a Pope is coming back, but this time was John Paul II. And it's interesting how he's in the sanctuary, Bishop Sheen is in the sanctuary, and at this time, on this side is Cardinal Cook, who was the Cardinal Archbishop of New York at the time. Well, the Holy Father comes in, and instead of going straight to be greeted by Cardinal Cook, he goes to the right, where Bishop Sheen was. And Bishop Sheen, in his great love for the Vicar of Christ, tries to kneel down in front of the Pope. But the Pope embraces him. And that's one of the most beautiful pictures of Fulton J Sheen. Well, that was the 4th of October, 1979. Guess what? Guess what?
What?
He will die on the 9th of December, 1979. And let me tell you this. He used to tell me all the time, I have made a holy hour every single day. I could tell you beautiful episodes in my life. When I had arrived at 109 East 38th Street, the first day I wanted to impress the bishop. So I figured the following day, I went down to the chapel. We had a beautiful chapel on the ground floor. And I went down and I said, let me go there early so I will welcome the bishop when he comes down. That was 6:15 in the morning. And there I am coming down those steps. I can still see it. You know, those kind of brownstone homes. You still see myself. Look, I made the first boo-boo. Look, the light is in the chapel. Last night I forgot, you know, to turn off the light in the chapel. Who knows what the bishop is going to say? So I opened the door. And there he was, kneeling down in front of his Lord. And if you want to see the kneeler where he knelt, you still can see it when you go to visit his tomb in the crypt of St. Patrick's Cathedral. And I have to say that he would stay there kneeling down until 7:30. In those days there were no celebrations. So he would serve my Mass at 7:30, then I would serve his Mass at 8 o'clock. Then we would go down for breakfast. Sometimes we would have important guests or Victor de Leppa. Victor de Leppa was another beautiful. Every Friday we would invite for dinner Victor de Leppa. He was cured, Victor. But his family refused to see him because he was all kind of completely disfigured. And the bishop would always take care of him. He had found an apartment for him, paid for whatever. He did not want anybody to know it. This is the first time that probably is said in public in this book. Then he would have dinner, we would have dinner with Victor de Leppa. He would come in the morning just at 2. And there were other people like, I don't know, There was Maureen O'Hara, you know, some of these great actors and actresses. There was an unknown small actor, I don't remember his name. I think, oh yeah, he used to come, not for mass, he used to come for advice from the bishop. His name was, isn't it? Oh, Ronnie Reagan? One of those. You don't probably know. And then naturally, but very often, one of his comrades would be there. There would be Thomas Watson Sr. I don't know if you remember, he was the founder of IBM. Probably you heard of IBM. Huh? He used to come, a little bit of the thing, great intelligence. And he would have come down for breakfast immediately after. So these are some of the things that come to mind while I speak about Fulton J Sheen. There is so much to say, but the most important impact that he had, even on the council. The Second Vatican Council, as you do know, started on the 11th of October 1962. We finished on the 8th of December 1965, actually 3 months of every year. The bishops from all over the world would be there. 2,500 bishops from all over the world, plus I was one of the periti of the council, us helping out. And at that council, there was a young auxiliary bishop that became very good friends with us. He was coming from another country. Sometimes I forget. Oh, Poland. His name was Karol Wojtyła. You know, he was just been named bishop. And there was another so-called theologian, but he was not known at all, actually, at that time. It was at the council. Again, you know, my memory. Oh yeah, his name was Joseph Ratzinger. You heard of it? Yeah. And actually, that was his kind of, I have to tell you something that probably you won't like this, you know, but Joseph Ratzinger at the time was kind of very leftist. Huh? Did you know that? No, this is something that you just learning now. But later on, he understood, you know, what was the power of the council when he went back to his diocese. At that time, he was just a theologian taking care of Cardinal Franks, who was the Cardinal Archbishop of Cologne. He had come just to help out. So the council was a very important event in the history, not of the church, but the history of humanity. If you read some of the council documents, you will realize, especially the one of the church in the modern world, you will have in every subject, delicate subject, just war. You know, right now, I was saying in my homily this morning, you know, probably very few people know that right now, by the way, I'm working now at a place called, what's the name of it? The United Nations. And I'm dealing with 193 delegations from all over the world. You can imagine how, you know, confusing the whole thing is. But we have right now, we have 17 wars raging across the globe. Just think about it. And not just war, that argument is, you will find it in one of the documents of the council. Well, Karol Wojtyła did not really make any impressive talks, but Bishop Sheen did. Every father of the council was allowed to speak only 10 minutes. On the 9th minute, the president of the day, he would say, "Your time is up. You have to conclude." Everything was in Latin, by the way. No simultaneous translation. Tempus tuum exhaustum est, valeas concludere. And let us suppose that some of the fathers, especially those who were very fluent in Latin, they did not want to conclude, you know, and they would go on. But especially Daphne, who was the Cardinal of Berlin at the time, would say, well, and he would announce the next speaker. Now, most of the times, you get tired of listening, just like we get tired to listen to so many speeches of the UN right now. But this was an important event. However, most of the council fathers would go to the two coffee bars, one on one side and one on the other side of St. Peter's Basilica, to spend some time and discuss issues. But when Fulton J Sheen was announced, I'll never forget, every one of the fathers went back to their seats. It was a full house when he spoke. And he spoke on the Church of the Poor, the Church of the Missions, and so many other subjects. That goes to show you what a man he was at that time, still is. I would like briefly, I don't want to annoy you, but briefly I want to mention the fact that many have asked me what's happening to the cause of beatification of Fulton J Sheen, over the bones. I was on NBC, Fox News, explaining. We do have a problem with the Diocese of Peoria, because Peoria is the diocese where Bishop Sheen was born, in a small village called El Paso, Illinois. Well, the Diocese of Peoria started the course of beatification in the year 2002. So they had, to carry the burden. It's a burden of a course. It's a lot of papers that have to be, a lot of work that has to be done. So now they are saying, well, we would like to open the body and then possibly get some relics. That's the reason. Now, the Archdiocese of New York, and I'm one of those witnesses, Bishop Sheen never went back to Peoria after his ordination. He was ordained there. Then he went to Belgium, the University of Louvain. Then he came back. He was an assistant pastor, in those days we called them assistant pastors, in the diocese. Then he came to Washington. He was a teacher at Catholic University for 25 years. Then he became auxiliary bishop of New York. So all his ministry was done in New York. Radio, television, was always Fulton J Sheen. And this is why he wanted to be buried in New York. So much so, and this is a first most probably, so much so that he had bought a kind of a plot, cemetery plot in Queens, until Bishop Sheen was the soul of New York. So Cardinal Cook, when he died, said, no, I would like the bishop to be buried in the crypt of the cathedral, together with the Cardinal Archbishops of New York. Cardinal Egan, my friend, just died, and I want you to pray for his repose of his soul. He's going to be buried there this coming Tuesday. So just give you a glimpse. But I would like you to have, if you have any questions, otherwise, as I said, I will bother you until tomorrow morning at least. We're talking about the episodes in my life with this exceptional man. We have two young people here that they have, you have those mics here, whatever? So if you have any questions here, I will be very, very happy to answer them. Yes, no, maybe? Well, I'm so clear, this reminds me when one lady after Bishop Sheen spoke about the Trinity, and this lady at the end, he said, Bishop, now I understand everything about the Trinity. The bishop said, please, stop right there. The Trinity is a mystery. So if you say that you understood everything, I'm a heretic. Just to give you something. So any questions there? Go ahead.
What is meant by venerable? When did Bishop Sheen become venerable?
Beautiful. It's a very beautiful question. See, there are several steps in the process of beatification and canonization. I will try to explain to you what we usually, I say usually because then the Pope can always decide, like he did with St. John the 23rd. miracle was not needed, according to the Pope, was not needed because his holiness was such that it was very clear that he was a holy man. So the Holy Father can decide. However, the normal process is this. First, we go through like getting together all the testimonies possible. Like, and especially in the case of Sheen, we had to go through the 72 bestsellers to see whether there were kind of errors or heresies and whatever. And so it was a long process. Now, at the end of this first process, started by the Diocese of Peoria, then these documents are brought to Rome. The Holy Father and the Congregation for the Causes of Saints looks through those documents. Then at the end, the Pope declares that Bishop Sheen, in the case, had heroic virtues. And that, the first title that he's given is Servant of God. Then later on, we are going through the second part of the process, and finally, in kind of June of I think in 2012, there is another step, and Bishop Sheen was declared venerable. Now, you need a miracle in order to become blessed. Then eventually another miracle to become canonized. Until June of 2013, he was just, still the miracle had not been approved by the Vatican. The miracle was this. A wonderful couple who was very devoted to Sheen in Peoria, young couple, they were expecting the first baby. And naturally, you can imagine, her mother was, so both of them, naturally were expecting with great, they had told her that it would be very difficult. Well, the baby is born, but it's stillborn. And after 61 minutes, the baby was alive and doing well, so much so that now he is, really, he's moving around, he's 3.5 years old now, so it was truly a miracle. Now this miracle is going to be examined first by the Theological Commission of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints, and then by the Medical Commission. So it's a team of theologians and team of doctors that eventually will have. This was done, and on the 24th of June of 2012, the miracle was approved. Now, we are expecting a date from the Holy Father. Most probably think of the bones will be resolved very soon by the two dioceses of New York and Peoria, and then we will have the beatification. Then we need another miracle for the canonization. Certainly, Fulton J Sheen deserves to be the patron saint of the mass media. There is no doubt whatsoever in my mind. Did I answer that question?
You said you will be beatified.
What's that?
He will be beatified.
I can't hear.
He will? He will be beatified.
Yes, he will be beatified, sure. Everything is, we're ready for it, actually. He will be beatified as soon as the Holy Father decides the date. And so it's up to the Holy Father now, because the two commissions have given the okay for the miracle. So it is truly a miracle. 61 minutes, being dead and then kind of a resurrection, the true sense of the word. Yes, any other questions? Yes.
Hi. I spent several years in the Diocese of Rochester, And Bishop Sheen's legacy was variously admired or ignored there. I just wondered what he thought at the time that he spent there.
That's beautiful. That's another great, wonderful question. Well, Rochester. Well, first of all, you have to read the book. In the book, I'm saying something that up until now has never been said or written about. Some people were saying that there was a squabble with the Cardinal Archbishop of New York, Cardinal Francis Spellman, between the two. Now, let me tell you something. In 1951, it was Cardinal Spellman who chose Sheen to be his auxiliary bishop. He was not afraid of the great popularity of Fulton J Sheen. So he suggested that he would become auxiliary bishop of New York. I'm starting at the beginning in order to understand what happened. So then we had a little problem with Cardinal Spellman, because Cardinal Spellman was a doer. He wanted things done almost like that. I was in the office at the time, the propagation of the faith, and the money that being given by the people for the propagation of the faith naturally was the responsibility of the national office, the national director of the propagation of the faith, namely Fulton J Sheen. At one point, Cardinal Spellman needed a certain amount of money immediately. So he asks the bishop I said, the bishop very humbly, he said, yes, Your Eminence, it's no problem. But you just ask the propagation of the faith in Rome, and fine, no problem. But I don't have the money. It's not mine. Whatever belongs to me belongs to the poor of the world. And that's why I am doing this, Spellman did not like that. So ever since, there was this kind of conflict. Now, when it comes to Rochester, everyone was saying when he was named to Rochester that it was because of Spellman. That is not true at all. I don't know what's his name, Ray Arroyo, was saying wrongly so in the preface to the new publication of the Treasury claim that he was sent some kind of a punishment. No, that is not so. I was present with the bishop when we had an audience at the end of the council, had an audience after 1966, to be exact. We had an audience with Paul VI. All the popes wanted to do something for Bishop Sheen. John the 23rd loved him so much. And actually Paul VI said to him at that audience, and I am present at that audience, 13th of May, I remember the day. I remember also because the Pope those days gave me a special rosary, which I still have, and I published the picture of my rosary given to me on that particular day at that audience. And the bishop is asking, when Paul VI said, we have to do something for you. You have done so much for the church. We want to do something for you. Well, Your Holiness, anything. I will do whatever Your Holiness wants, but I would like to have my own people. In other words, he was auxiliary bishop of New York. He wanted his own diocese, his own people. Those were the words. The Holy Father, this is another news for so many people, wanted to make him a cardinal, but naturally not in New York. He said, Bishop, we would like, Your Excellency, we would like you to come and take charge of a congregation, a dicastery in Rome. And that would be immediately, automatically, he would become cardinal. The bishop, in his great humility, said, Your Holiness, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. However, I have to tell you that my ministry is in my language, the language I know most. If I come here, I'll be one of the many functionaries and nothing else. The Pope understood. Then, now I'm a witness, because then later on I became also a member of the Apostolic Nunciature in Washington, D.C. And I know how it happened. The Holy Father personally called his representative in Washington, who's responsible for naming bishops. He said the best diocese, as soon as it is vacant, at that time, and I congratulate you, Rochester was one of the most beautiful dioceses in the United States. I don't know about now. You know, forget about what happened afterwards, I don't know. But that was the point, to give him the best available diocese. That was done immediately. So much so. This is another first that you're going to know through the book. So much so that usually the Apostolic Nuncio in Washington calls, in this particular case, the Cardinal, the night before, saying, well, I want you to know that so and so, one of your auxiliaries is going to be changed. And here's the answer of Cardinal Spellman. No, he's all right. He can stay here as auxiliary bishop, because he was under his thumb, so to speak. All right, the human part of the church. No, it's all right. And the other side of the phone, you know, like in Washington, the Archbishop Nuncio said, Your Eminence, I have called you to tell you not to ask, but tomorrow morning it will be announced, the naming of Bishop Sheen to the Diocese of Rochester. That's the true story. And that's interesting that I think I published one of the pictures of me and the Cardinal. It's interesting how he smiles, because the following morning, you can imagine, you know, the newspapermen and everybody was at the residence of the Cardinal with this big news. And actually the Cardinal had to give the official announcement. And he's a happy face, you know, but he had to show. So there was no punishment. I'm coming to the point, on the part of sending him to one of the most important available dioceses at that time in the United States of America. Speaking of Rochester, he tried his best. He was always, remember this, he was always ahead of his times. Now we are doing the same thing. But he tried at that time. There was one parish, St. Bernard's, I remember, had to be closed. There was no one there. There were 5, 10 people. So he said, why don't we build homes for the homeless, those who cannot afford it. Now we're trying to do something similar, you know, but he was prophetic in so many different ways. Go on and explain in details. But in Rochester, he did a beautiful job. And from my letters, because we have started this kind of correspondence that will get up to almost the end of his life. Every single month, actually, he wrote, telling me also the problems of Rochester. And at one point he asked me, he said, well, I would like you to ask the Holy Father. I was in Rome at the time, 26 years. If they had sent me to Rome for 2 years after the bishop went to Rochester, I was in Washington, and from Washington I was called to Rome. And we obeyed in those years. Instead of 2 years, I ended up 26 years in the Vatican, just taking care of the English-speaking world. But in one of the letters, actually several of these handwritten letters, he's asking me, please ask the Holy Father that I want to retire, not on my chronological 75th birthday. I want to retire, my retirement to coincide with my 50 years of priesthood. And I insisted, and we actually, that's why he stayed only 3.5 years in Rochester. And then he retired, not at 75, but before 75, simply because he wanted to the two events to coincide. His 50th anniversary of ordination to the priesthood. Isn't that unbelievable? I mean, this is the holiness, the humility of this man. Interesting. In one of the letters, he says, I am just finishing, says to me, I'm just finishing my treasure in clay. His autobiography, but it's not an autobiography, it's just a hymn to the priesthood. And he adds in Britain, I never said one word about Spelman. He and I understood. Nobody else would understand. But now all of you may understand what he was saying. Did I answer your question? Thank you. Anything else? I'm happy to answer all your questions.
Monsignor, my name is William Bond. I'm from St. Bernadette Catholic Church. I got a simple question, just a little question, if it's all right. Maybe I remember this years ago, but I might have forgotten it. 50 years ago. Fulton J Sheen, Bishop Fulton J Sheen, what was the letter J stand for? Now, I'm saying it was John, and Deacon says it was Joseph. So
no, all right.
I'm trying to win a bet, but I don't remember the. Okay. Maybe I remembered it years ago, back in the 50s. But Fulton J Sheen.
Right.
What was the letter J stand for?
Okay, beautiful, beautiful question. Very simply answered. The original name of Fulton J Sheen was Peter John Sheen. So he decided to change his name and take the maiden name of the mom. So Fulton, and then remained John. So it's not Joseph. Tell Father that's not Joseph, but it's John. So Fulton J Sheen. Fulton was the last name of his mom. He was very devoted to his mom. And then John is the middle initial, so to speak. Sheen.
God love you.
Thank you. God love you. By now and God love you. Remember how we used to finish that? Yes, Deacon.
Yes, Your Reverence. Your Reverence, thank you for being here. What major themes do you think that Archbishop Sheen would like to communicate to American Catholics today?
Well, knowing him, if you kind of go back to his television series, all Bishop Sheen Show and so on and so forth, you will see how most of those ideas of so many years ago could be, I would say, apropos today. He was a prophet in his own times, and he continues to be a prophet because most of those things are realistic today. He would be talking to the young in a very special way, very special way. He would be talking in such a way that the young people would remember. Think, for instance, just coming to mind, one day there was this young couple that was getting instructions. Actually, she was getting the instruction from the bishop. At the 366 with them, that was our office, the 11th and the 12th floor. Those were the offices. The residence was 109 East 88th Street. And that particular day, the bishop was talking about the rosary. You know, the devotion to the Blessed Mother. He was, as you do know, enamored. You know, the Blessed Mother was everything to him. So much so that, remind me, I'll tell you the 3 wishes that he wanted in that holy hour. This day, you know, start talking about the rosary. And the young lady says, hey, Bishop, let's talk about something else. You know, I don't like the rosary. He said, you're always repeating yourself. Hail Mary, Hail Mary, Hail Mary. You know, what's this? The bishop didn't say anything. He said, oh, by the way, you know, he said, who's that young man waiting outside, you know, for you? Oh, that's my fiancée. Oh, I said, you have to marry us. You don't forget. You know, Bishop, oh, yeah. Guess what? I bet last night before you went to bed, he called you. Oh, yes, he's always calling me. And I bet he said, I love you. Yes, she said. He's always saying, I love you. Even now, before I came in and he said, I love you. He always repeats himself, I love you. The bishop said, don't believe him, because he's repeating himself. See, these are the things that really, he was so interested in giving instructions personally, not only to the great Fritz Chrysler, the other big like the son of Hilton and all the others, you know, but he would go especially to the young people, giving himself instructions. The young. Take, for instance, about war. As you do know, he had a problem also, this kind of problem with Cardinal Spellman, because Cardinal Spellman, being the head of the chaplains of the United States, he could not say anything about the war in Vietnam. Bishop Sheen was the one that really publicly preached against the war in Vietnam. He would preach against dictatorship. Today we have so many dictatorships around the world. And he was always insistent, so much so that 1 week before Stalin died in 1953, he actually, in one of his television shows, officially, he said, let us suppose that Stalin would die tomorrow. The following week, Stalin, the great dictator, Russian dictator, was probably some of the young people never heard of him. But at that time, he was really the boss of half of the world. These are many of the things that would be part of whatever he would preach today publicly. When it comes to the church, deacon, you have to read the book, because I'm insisting on many of the issues that we are dealing with today in the church. They were treated by Bishop Fulton J Sheen long time ago with a solution to that problem. Clergy, nuns, a lady, in a very special way, he was defending women. It's an incredible way of understanding what he had in mind and what he would propose to the world at that time and today. So there were so many subjects we could go on, you know, but there are a lot of details here. Just I don't know if I have, for instance, let me read to you. I just put aside something. The spiritual life in our times begins with a no to the world. That's his style, huh? The Russian Christians were tested with communism at that time. The Germans with Nazism. The rest with secularism. Only those who have already said yes to the transcendent have the power to say no. The authorities in the early centuries were not escapists. They were warriors. They went out to the desert to confront the devil and to say no to him. People today are so hungry for bread, and we're going to give them Rice Krispies and cracker. My dear friends, this is today. You know, he wrote it a long time ago, but that's, you know, in 1970 he confided to me a deep concern about the future. At the heart of the concern is also his fellow bishops. He saw the weaknesses of a good number of bishops, weaknesses which undermined their authority as successors of Christ and of the apostles. At this critical time, he found bishops who were avoiding problems, difficult decisions, delegating their authority to others, failing to teach and to discipline, listening to bad advices, and demonstrating apathy. And then he concludes, so many are afraid of being unloved, he told me. So out of this, unfortunately, sometimes when we got with popularity, we got so taken by popularity. Remember, every time that I am I'm called to give, especially during Vatican fairs or whatever, on TV, I remember, going back to my parish, like in the morning I would be on Fox or on NBC, whatever. Then we'll have a function in the evening, and they would say, Msgr, I saw you on TV. I said, what's the difference between me here and on TV there? I mean, this kind of being willing to be very, very popular, it's something that should be avoided. He always did, notwithstanding the fact that he was in the limelight. He would always try to be himself at all times, humbly so. That's what we should understand, and perhaps we should follow this. But let me say, I know that you don't like me. Okay, that's all right. Tamara is saying that I should stop, but it's kind of difficult. When every single day, he made this holy hour, so to speak, holy hour, because it ended up at 2.5 hours. Wherever we would go around the world, we had two important things. At least twice a week, we had to play tennis. That was important to him. It was good exercise. And every single day, the holy hour. One day, we arrived in Paris in the morning. We had stopped at the airport in London. And as soon as they had found out that Bishop Sheen was passing by, all the mass media were there because they wanted to help the poor. In his humility, he would always abide. Every time he would be stopped all over the world for an autograph or a picture. By the way, I don't have many pictures with him because I would always end up by taking the picture. That's normal, And they would say, "Oh, Bishop, can we have a picture with you?" Naturally, I would be the one taking the picture. But this particular time in Paris, I'll never forget. We arrived in Paris early in the morning on the way to Rome. And as we are passing the Church of Saints of Peace, he's dead tired. I'm too. Huh? And he says to me, "Why don't we go in to make the holy hour?" I said, "Bishop, you must be. You're tired? What kind of holy hour are we going to make? I mean, let's go first to the hotel, rest a little bit, and then we'll go and make the holy hour." He would always listen to me, unfortunately or fortunately. But that time he did not. He said, "Come on, let's go in." All right. So we stop the car, we go in. He kneels down, and he goes to sleep. And he slept for 1 whole hour. I am behind fuming, you can imagine. And he turns around. And he turns around with the simplicity of the saints. He smiles. He said, "I guess the good Lord wanted this kind of holy hour for us." My dear friends, let me conclude. He had 3 wishes that he expressed to the good Lord during these holy hours. One, he used to say to me all the time, "I want to be as active as possible until I'm 80 years old." The other one, "I would love to die near a feast of the Blessed Mother." The third, I would like to die in front of the Blessed Sacrament. He would write those books facing the Blessed Sacrament. We had the chapel here, the big study here. That's where we wrote most of his books, facing the Blessed Sacrament. Well, my dear friends, Fulton J Sheen was active until the end of his life, at the age of 84. He was found the morning of the 9th of December, kneeling down in his small chapel, in his small apartment on the east side, New York, Manhattan, kneeling down in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Talking about prayers being answered. That was Fulton J Sheen. Thank you.